Hi, Shalom friends. How long does it take you to make important decisions? Some people seem to have more difficulty than others. I'm not talking about like what toothpaste to use, even though for some people that's also a whole issue. But if you're sitting, for example, in your apartment or your home, how long did it take you to make the decision to move into the home? This location versus a different. Look at the furnishings. Did you go around? Did you do comparison shopping? Did you go online to see what's available? If you made the decision to marry, or maybe you made the decision not to marry, how long did that take you? Were you dating for years before you made the decision one way or another? Basically, it would seem that the more important decisions, especially those that have to do with finances, take longer times. So before you buy a house or a car or any expensive item. Then there's another time when it seems to take a fair amount of time, when your decision will have an impact on how you perceive yourself. So certainly a job or a profession, many people have agonized years. What studies should I take? What profession would I like? What speaks to me? And frankly, even buying a dress, I know this from experience, sometimes they'll go and look for a long time to find the dress that speaks to them. Okay, so we know making decisions takes time. And how about life-changing decisions? A decision to change your life. How long does that take? You know, it's a very interesting thing. The previous Lubavitcher Rabbi smoked. He was a very holy tzaddik, and he used smoking as part of his spiritual growth as well. But on a very basic level, it helped. It sort of composed him to the extent that it allowed him to think. Until one time he had a doctor that examined him, and the doctor made the comment, Rebbe, you should not smoke. It's not good for your health. And they continued with examination. And at the end, he said, would you like some pointers on how to stop smoking? To which the Rabbi said, oh, I don't smoke anymore. He said, what do you mean you don't smoke anymore? He said, well, you told me it's not good for health. I made the decision not to smoke, so I won't. And we're talking probably seconds. Within seconds, the Rebbe had such mastery over his desires and over his body. When he made a decision not to smoke, he suddenly stopped smoking and never smoked after that. Most of us can only envy such a control, because most of us deal with that in order to change, you need time. But even in our own limited control of our body, if you thought deeply about it, you would see that literally in seconds, people can make decisions. And people have changed their life within seconds. So all of us know the proverbial story of watching your kid at the pool, and then 2-3 seconds you divert your attention, and a second later you find your son, daughter, in the pool, not doing well. And at that second, literally second or two, that you moved away and you stopped thinking, something life-changing happened. Of course, we want to make this a happy YouTube, so we'll say you jump in and you save this child, and you make a firm resolution that you will never allow this child to be unsupervised in the pool area. So too with car crashes, etc. Let me share with you a very, very interesting Talmud. In Talmudic literature, marriage has two components. One is called betrothal, where you formally designate a husband and a wife. There's a formal designation where the would-be husband actually says to his would-be wife, I want you to be betrothed to me according to our tradition. That's called betrothal. And then there's a second aspect, which of course is called the chuppah, the canopy, when they actually enter the home or become married to the extent that intimacy is permitted. Now, the betrothal is a very interesting part of this process, because if she says, yes, I do want to get married to you, there has to be honesty and transparency. So what happens, for example, he says he drives up with a fancy car, and he's very well dressed, and he flashes a lot of money, and he says to this woman, we'll call her Dina, he says, Dina, I heard you're looking for a rich husband. Here I am. And will you be betrothed to me? And in front of witnesses, and she says yes. Which essentially is like a formal engagement. That's how we'll use the expression, a formal engagement. Later on she finds out that this guy doesn't have a job. The car was borrowed, and the money was his friend's. And essentially, this whole thing was a big facade. The law, Jewish law, says there is no betrothal. She wanted to get engaged and eventually married to a rich man. He lied to her. He made it sound like he's rich, but he's actually not. The same thing is true even if he says, hi, he comes with a beautiful accent, he's from London, and he went to the fine schools, and he's very sophisticated, and he has a great accent and a charming smile. And she says, I fell in love with your accent and with your Oxford upbringing. And then she finds out that this whole thing, he's an actor. He was born in Wisconsin, and that's where he lives. So what's the law? The law is that the betrothal is not valid because there was a misrepresentation. Okay, so now finally, let's get to the point. Here's a man who looks very observant, very religious, and he's dating this girl, Dina, and in front of two witnesses says, we've been dating, I'd like you to be my wife, do you agree? And she says, well, I always wanted to marry a yeshiva graduate, someone that's observant and religious, and you certainly look the part, so yes. And then she finds out that this guy doesn't even keep the Sabbath, doesn't keep kosher. But he presented himself like a very observant, pious person. What's the law now? Well, based on the two examples or three examples I gave you, it should be obvious that there's no betrothal over here, because she wants to marry someone who's a righteous person, a tzaddik, and sadly, he's not a righteous person at all. In fact, we could call him a rasha, a wicked person. But you know what the law is? The law is that we need further investigation. Why? Because maybe when he betrothed her, he gave her a ring, maybe at that moment he thought about doing teshuvah. He actually, when he was talking to this girl, Dina, though a minute ago he had eaten in McDonald's, a not kosher place, when he meets Dina and he's ready to betroth her as a Jewish husband to acquiring or having a Jewish wife, maybe at that moment he thought to himself, you know what? I want to change my life. I want to be a worthy husband of this religious girl. I want to be a good Jew, a practicing Jew. Now that's just a thought. But you know something? The Talmud says that that thought can change this person in a legal sense. What the law at the end is not relevant for this YouTube. It's the discussion which is so interesting. How a thought of doing teshuvah, a thought of changing your life, a thought of transforming yourself from wicked to righteous, all it needs is a minute. It's just a thought, or a second, or a couple of seconds, or a couple of minutes. And you ask yourself, is it possible? And I throw out to you, is it possible for a person to make a decision in a moment that he's going to lose 40 pounds, which is going to entail weeks and months of exercise and change of diet? Of course it is possible. We know people that did it. Is it possible for a person to date and after 1 minute or 1 hour make a decision, this person, I want to be my husband or my wife? It might take a year of dating. Their decision was made in an instant. Now, this might be considered the exception to the rule, but it's not impossible. Which leads us to the conclusion of my YouTube. Each and every one of us can improve, but we say we need time. We have to study more. You know, when I retire, I'll have plenty of time. Maybe then, when the children grow up, when I get X amount of money in the bank. You don't have to wait for that. And you should not wait for that. You should make a resolution. It's a new year in the Jewish tradition. A moment of sincere reflection can put us on a new trajectory, a new path. We might change immediately, and we might make the journey of change. But the decision doesn't have to take long. And with that power that we have, we then turn to the Almighty and we say, Almighty God, how long does it take for you to bring us back to Israel? Years? As long as it took us to take people out of Afghanistan? Come on, silly. God could do it in a moment. How long will it take for the Holy Temple to be rebuilt? In our tradition, nothing more than the blink of an eye. So friends, as we change, let us be privileged to see the transformation of the world with the coming of Mashiach. Amen.